The morning air was warm and unhurried, the kind that tempts you to stay wrapped in blankets all day. Amy nestled against me, her body fitting effortlessly against mine just as it had for the past 2 decades. I held her close, inhaling the familiar scent of her hair, letting memories of our life together drift through my mind. Our first dates, our wedding, the births of our daughters who came just a year apart. We had built a life together, watched our little girls grow from toddlers to teenagers, and then sent them off to college, leaving the house quiet once again. I pressed a kiss to the top of her head. 20 years went by in the blink of an eye, I murmured. Now that it's just the 2 of us again, we should enjoy it. Go back to how things were before the kids. Amy let out a soft giggle, her fingers tracing slow, lazy circles on my chest. We may not be newlyweds anymore, she teased. But that doesn't mean we can't keep things interesting. I smiled, feeling drowsy and content, my hand gently stroking hers. Her skin was just as soft as ever. She sighed happily, pressing even closer. I was on the verge of drifting off when she lifted her head and kissed me. "Tim," she murmured, her voice steady. "Being with you like this, it's one of the greatest things in my life. I know you feel the same. We have something good, something solid, and I never want that to change." I mumbled something incoherent, too lost in the warmth of the moment to form real words. She kissed me again, this time lingering. "What we have is special," she whispered. "I want us to grow old together, spoil our grandkids, and always be there for each other." I nodded, pulling her even closer, ready to surrender to sleep. But then her voice cut through the haze. "Before grandkids take over our lives, though, I want one more adventure. One last thrill before we settle into being old and boring." That woke me up. My eyes fluttered open, my brow furrowing as I tried to process her words. "Adventure," I echoed, groggy. She hesitated, then nodded. "I know it's selfish, but I want to do something different, something exciting before we're too old to try." A quiet alarm bell started ringing in the back of my mind. I shifted, propping myself up on one elbow to get a better look at her. "What kind of adventure are we talking about?" Amy bit her lip, her expression wavering between excitement and hesitation. "Well, it's more for me, really. But you could have your own adventure too." That alarm in my head grew louder. "So this isn't an us thing. It's a you thing." She winced. "Yes, but..." I sat up completely now, fully awake. "Amy, just say it. What's this about?" She inhaled deeply, bracing herself. "You know Dan from sales? He and his brother bought a sailboat last month. Susan from my office went out with them last weekend, and she said it was incredible. She told me all about it, and I mentioned it sounded fun. Next thing I know, Dan is inviting both of us to go sailing next weekend." I stared at her. "So some guy I've never met wants to take my wife away for the weekend?" She nodded. "With Labor Day, it would be 3 days." A heavy weight settled in my stomach. "Amy, that's not just selfish. It's..." I exhaled sharply. "It's completely disrespectful." She quickly reached for her phone. "I have pictures of the boat. It's beautiful. Susan had an amazing time." I shook my head, feeling my jaw tighten. "Susan is single. You're married. Do you really not see the problem here?" Amy swallowed hard. "I know," she said, reaching out for me. "But it's just one weekend, one little adventure before." I pulled away, swinging my legs off the bed and standing up. "No, absolutely not. Do you really think I'd be okay with you sailing off with some guy I don't even know? What do you think their intentions were, inviting 2 women onto their boat?" Her face flushed. "I never said I'd sleep with them. Did Susan?" I shot back. Amy looked away, her cheeks growing redder. "She did. But that doesn't mean I would." My chest tightened painfully. "So the real adventure isn't the boat. It's spending a weekend with 2 men who clearly have something else in mind." She let out a shaky breath. "Tim, I'm sorry. I got caught up in Susan's excitement. Sounded fun, but I wasn't thinking. I won't go." I stood there, my heart pounding. Just 20 minutes ago, I had been happier than ever, holding her, believing in us. Now I wasn't sure what to believe. You made me think we were solid, I said quietly. That we wanted the same things. But now I don't know. Tears welled in her eyes, her voice breaking. No, Tim, please. I love you. I was stupid and selfish. Forget I ever brought it up. I turned away, walking into the bathroom and locking the door behind me. The hot water of the shower did nothing to wash away the sick feeling in my gut. How could she even consider something like that? When I finally emerged, she was curled up on the bed, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. She looked up as soon as she heard me, her eyes red and swollen. For 22 years, I never questioned you, I murmured, running my fingers through her hair. Not once did I doubt us until today. Her sobs deepened. I'm so sorry, she choked out. While you were in there, I kept imagining if it had been you telling me about 2 women inviting you away. It made me feel sick. How could I have been so blind, so selfish? I didn't respond right away. The damage had been done. The foundation of trust we had built over 2 decades was no longer unshakable. What happens now? I finally asked. She pulled back, wiping her tear-streaked face. I'll call Susan and tell her I'm not going. And I'll make sure Dan understands that what he did was completely inappropriate. I'll even quit my job if I have to. Maybe work at your sister's bakery instead. Somewhere I won't be surrounded by people who think this kind of thing is normal. I studied her, searching for any sign of insincerity. But she looked genuinely remorseful. Even so, a seed of doubt had taken root. Please, Tim, she whispered. Let me fix this. I wasn't sure if I could ever fully move past it. But I also couldn't throw away 22 years of marriage over a single mistake. So I nodded. Amy clung to me, crying softly against my chest, kissing me between her apologies and promises to make things right. Epilogue. Healing wasn't instant. Took time, more time than I would have liked. Amy followed through on her words. She quit her job and started working at my sister's bakery, pouring her energy into something new. She never spoke of seeking out adventures again. Years later, when we finally retired, she turned to me one morning, a playful glint in her eye. Well, she teased. Now that we're officially old and boring, what do you say to one last adventure? Just you and me this time. I laughed, pulling her into my arms. That sounds perfect. And it was. The days that followed were tense. Amy wasted no time calling Susan, declining the sailing trip in a tone so firm there was no room for debate. She even confronted Dan at work, making it clear that she was never interested in anything beyond professional interactions. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Every time I looked at her, I saw the woman who, if only for a moment, had entertained the idea of throwing away everything we'd built for a fleeting thrill. That thought refused to let go. A week later, we sat across from each other at the dinner table, an unbearable silence stretching between us. You're still upset, Amy said quietly, absent-mindedly pushing her food around her plate. I set my fork down. I'm not angry, I admitted. I'm just trying to make sense of it. She swallowed hard. I already told you I wasn't thinking. It was a mistake. But you were thinking, I countered. Enough to bring it up. Enough to imagine it happening. Her eyes shimmered with fresh tears. Tim, I love you. I don't want anyone else. I just got caught up in the idea of something different for a moment. That's all. I let the word hang between us. Different, I repeated. Different for you. She winced. That's not what I meant. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. I don't know if I can just let this go, Amy. Every time I close my eyes, I hear you saying you wanted an adventure with someone else. She reached across the table, her fingers wrapping around mine. Then let's have our own adventure, she pleaded. Just the 2 of us. Something that reminds us why we're still us. I hesitated. A part of me wanted to pull away, to shut down completely. But another part, the part that had loved her for over 2 decades, ached to fix what had been broken. Like what? I asked cautiously. A small, hopeful smile tugged at her lips. Remember that road trip we always talked about? The one where we drive up the coast. No plans, no deadlines, just stopping wherever we feel like it. I did remember. We dreamed of it back when the girls were little, back when time and money had always been too tight. You're serious? I asked. She nodded. I'll book the time off work. We'll leave this weekend. No expectations, no pressure. Just us. I studied her face. The same face I had woken up to for more than 20 years. The same woman who had stood by my side through every high and low. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. I squeezed her hand. All right, I said. Let's go. So guys, if you all liked today's story, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon. Thank you for watching.